Denia is a brand new fusion resonator that deals resonance liberation damage that will be releasing in a couple of days. And today, we are going to go over her kit to properly understand what her role actually is. Because at first glance, this character looks like an absolute wall of text. But after sitting down and actually breaking her mechanics apart, her gameplay loop is honestly way simpler than it initially looked. Because at the end of the day, Denia is basically just a resource conversion machine. You generate one resource, convert it to another, then cash everything out in one giant nuke. And once you understand that, the entire character suddenly starts making a lot more sense. So in this video, we're gonna go over how her kit actually works, what her rotation is going to look like, her best teams, echo set, weapon options, and whether or not her signature is even worth pulling. So, Denia is a 5-star fusion rectifier that basically functions as a hybrid sub DPS, amplifier, and an archetype enabler. And once you read her outro skill, it becomes very obvious that Kuro designed her specifically for fusion burst teams and tune strain teams, which is just Imeth, Luke, and any other future character designed around those archetypes. Her kit works in a pretty interesting way because you're basically just converting one resource into another and then cashing it out for a huge nuke. She has two forms, the Stagecraft form, which is the Happy Denia, and the Breakdown form, or the Angry Denia. In Stagecraft form, your job is simple. Build void particles. Void particles are generated through intro skill, resonance skill, and basic attack. Once your void particles are around 60% full, where the cap is 100, you can cast her first ultimate and enter Breakdown form. And this is where her kit gets interesting. In Breakdown form, you convert your void particles into Conformal charge, and that's the little Shikigami looking thing that's in her forte. Your goal is to completely fill that gauge to 100 so you can cast her second ultimate, which is the big nuke, and you can generate Conformal charge through basic attack or her resonance skill Beacon Breakdown form. But you should know, you never want to use Beacon Breakdown form because the Banish Breakdown form is significantly better. Banish grants flat 40 Conformal charge, it does not consume any void particles, and it becomes a mini nuke depending on how many dark cores you have. Now you might be wondering what dark cores are. Dark cores are the final resource in our kit. They increase the multiplier of your resonance skill Banish by 150% each stack. Dark cores are nice to have and give her a lot of front-loaded damage in her Banish skill, but they aren't actually necessary for her core gameplay loop. The actual gameplay loop is basically going to be build void particles, convert them to Conformal charge, then cash that out with the big ult. Now, her rotation actually seems very simple once you understand the economics behind void particles and Conformal charge. My assumptions for this rotation are void particles and Conformal charge have a 1-to-1 conversion ratio. Intro skill and resonance skill do not share an ICD for the void particle generation given through her passive. I am not taking Entropy Shift Stagecraft form passive void particle generation into account because that only makes the rotations even better. And lastly, Denia is in slot 2, meaning she receives an outro skill on her first rotation. Hey guys, Future Knifer here. I completely overlooked her passive. Engaging in combat immediately gives her 2 dark cores, so that assumption I just made about strictly needing to put her in the second slot for the intro skill, not actually necessary. Catching the intro skill still gives you Concerto energy and caps her 3 dark cores, so the base rotation stays exactly the same, but this is massive because it completely opens up her team comps, meaning you can comfortably run her in the third slot for a crazy no healer setup. Anyway, back to the video. So, what does a rotation actually look like? You enter the fight, and if your void particles are less than 20, they become 20 because of a passive. Then you cast intro skill that grants you 25 void particles, then resonance skill which grants you another 25 void particles. At this point you already have enough VP for a full breakdown rotation. Then you cast a first ultimate, enter breakdown form, and then immediately use her Banish resonance skill. Banish then grants you 40 conformal charge instantly. Then you perform basic attacks to convert the remaining roughly 60 void particles into the 60 conformal charge needed to hit 100. Once you have 100 conformal charge, you can cast her second ultimate. This one does not require any energy. Then it will trigger the erosion field, instantly return you back to stagecraft form, and then you can perform her outro skill. Now, once you read her outro skill, it becomes very obvious what Kuro wants you to do with this character. She is very clearly designed for Imith teams and Luke teams, because Denia basically has two modes, Fusion Burst and Tune Strain, and both of those modes heavily buff the exact archetypes those characters want to play. Your teams would look something like this. In Fusion Burst, your best team would be Imith, Denia and Chisa. This should pretty comfortably be her best Fusion Burst team. Now, if you don't have Chisa, or perhaps she's not available, you can slot in Mornier. And this is probably going to be the best alternative if Chisa's not there, and honestly could even compete or outperform the Chisa variant if you have Mornier's Sequence 1. And if you don't have Mornier or she's not available, you can just put in Verena. It's the budget I don't own anything option. Now for the Tune Strain teams. The best team is going to be Luke, Denia and Mornier. This honestly just looks absurd, like Denia buffs basically everything Luke wants. Now if Mornier is not available or you don't have her, just slot in Showkeeper. That's still a very solid option. And again, Verena the fallback option if your account is crying. Now the Mono Fusion team, Brand, Denia and Lupa. This team honestly looks kind of disgusting. Mono Fusion already has enough raw stat to function, and Denia slots into that shell surprisingly well. In this team, you can choose to run Denia in Fusion Burst mode, which will give you off-field damage and damage over time through her Fusion Burst stacks, or you could run her in the Tune Strain mode and give 15% damage amp to the incoming Resonator. Now, Echo sets are basically divided into two categories, depending on which mode you're playing. Fusion Burst or Tune Strain. For Fusion Burst, there are actually two very strong contenders, but I genuinely think one of them might secretly be better than the other. And no, you probably won't guess which one. Her best Fusion Burst set might actually be Flaming Clawprint. Yeah, seriously. I genuinely think that this has a very good chance of outperforming Chromatic Foam in overall team DPS if you either have her signature weapon or String Master. And the reason is actually pretty simple. Most of Denia's personal damage comes from Resonance Liberation damage, meaning she takes full advantage of the Liberation damage bonus and the Fusion damage bonus. So with Flaming Clawprint, you're getting 15% team-wide fusion damage, which also applies to her. 20% liberation damage bonus, which is her damage type, and then 12% fusion and 12% liberation damage bonus from the Lioness of Glory Echo, which is honestly just really efficient for her overall profile. So if you already have a good Flaming Clawprint set lying around, you can honestly just slap it on her and call it a day instead of wasting 600 years farming another set. Now with that said, I still think Chromatic Foam will probably be a general use best in slot because 25% plus 12% fusion damage bonus for the incoming Resonator is just absurdly efficient for boosting characters like Imith. So if you don't have her signature or String Master, then investing more into your carry's damage through Chromatic Foam will probably just be better overall. Now for the Tune Strain mode, she also has two options. First, Pact of Neon Light Leap. Now all of y'all looked at this set and thought, who the hell is going to use this on Denia? But honestly, it's actually half decent. Now unlike Linnea, Denia probably won't fully max out the attack buff, but 21% attack if your carry is at tuned DPS or 18% attack if they're not, plus the Hyvatia buff is still really solid utility. Now for the other option, Reel of Spliced Memories, and this set actually becomes very interesting specifically for Luke teams because Luke has direct tune break scaling in his kit. So Denia's passive already gives 10 tune break boost, but aside from that, the set giving you 20 tune break boost means Luke gains an additional 10% damage amplification from the set. for a total of roughly 20%, which could honestly end up being better, specifically for Luke teams. Now, thankfully her echo stats are actually very standard. Main stats are 4-3-3-1-1, where in the 4 cost you want crit rate or crit damage, for 3 cost you want fusion damage bonus, which is generally going to be better than attack percent, because her passive actually gives her attack. Then for 1 cost it's going to be double attack. For substats, you want enough energy regen to comfortably hit your rotation energy requirement. My guess right now is probably somewhere around 20 to 30% ER, but honestly, who the hell knows until release. After ER, prioritize crit rate, crit damage, resonance liberation damage, attack percent, and flat attack in that particular order. Now for her weapon options. Her signature is very strong. It gives 12% attack, 36% liberation damage bonus, but the really important part is the passive. Any active resonator who inflicts fusion burst or tune strain gains 24% attack. So this weapon is less of a selfish DPS weapon and more of a specialized support weapon for very specific archetypes. The problem is, the list of characters who can actually use this passive is extremely niche. Basically Imeth, Luke and Linnea. And that's kinda it. So yes, the weapon is very strong, but it's also very, very niche. Second is String Master. As always, String Master refuses to die. It's just an insanely efficient generalist option and should perform very well on her. After that, the gap honestly gets pretty rough. So if you don't have her signature or String Master, just slap Cosmic Ripples on her. Short answer, no. Long answer, still no. The reality is that in most of our teams, Imeth or Luke are going to be dealing the overwhelming majority of the team's damage anyway. So the situation is very similar to Lupa's, where you don't really need Lupa's weapon. You might want it, and it is a good weapon, and it buffs their archetype significantly, but it's in no world a necessary pull. So while her weapon is strong, it's nowhere near mandatory, especially because her F2P and generalist alternatives are still pretty functional. Personally, I would save the Astrides for the Cyberpunk patch instead. Overall, Denia honestly looks way less clunky than I initially thought she would be. Once you stop looking at the giant wall of text and instead look at the character as a generate resource, convert that resource, then cash out that resource, the entire kit suddenly becomes extremely straightforward. And honestly, if the numbers on release are even remotely close to what we're seeing right now, Imeth and especially Luke teams are probably going to become completely stupid. So, good luck on your pulls, and please don't accidentally use Beckon instead of Banish.